The Galactic Academy of Martial Excellence was the most famous school in all the known universe. It sat on a planet called Velum Prime, surrounded by 3 moons and endless stars. The buildings were tall and made of white stone that glowed in the sunlight. Young students from 100 different alien races came here to learn how to fight, how to survive, and how to become warriors. The academy had been standing for 3,000 years. In all that time, it had trained the best soldiers, the bravest fighters, and the most skilled warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Governments paid huge amounts of money to send their children here. Only the best of the best were allowed through its gates. On this particular morning, a new class of first-year students gathered in the Great Forge Chamber. The room was massive, with high ceilings and walls lined with tools and machines. Furnaces glowed with blue and orange fire. Tables were covered with metals and crystals that shone like captured stars. The air smelled of heat and iron. Instructor Kethral stood at the front of the room. He was 9 feet tall with blue scales covering his body and 4 arms that could each lift a small vehicle. His eyes were yellow and cold, and when he spoke, his voice echoed off the walls like thunder. "Welcome to your first real test," he said. "Today, you will forge a weapon." The students looked at each other with excitement. There were Torvins among them, creatures with hard shells like beetles and claws that could cut through metal. There were Yelmiri, thin and graceful beings with large eyes who could move things with their minds. There were Draxians who looked like walking mountains made of muscle and bone. There were a dozen other species, each one impressive in their own way. And in the back of the room, sitting quietly on a small bench, there was a human girl. Her name was Emma Price. She was 17 years old, with brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and brown eyes that watched everything carefully. She was not tall. She was not covered in armor or scales. She had no claws, no psychic powers, no special abilities of any kind. By the standards of every other species in the room, she was weak-dawed. Emma was the first human to ever attend the Galactic Academy. Earth had only joined the larger galactic community a few years ago, and they were entitled to send 1 student. Most people at the Academy thought it was a joke. Humans were considered primitive, barely out of the Stone Age by galactic standards. They had only been traveling through space for 200 years. No one expected Emma to survive the first month. Instructor Kethral continued his speech. "The Academy has provided you with the finest materials in all the galaxy. On these tables, you will find Valorium steel, quantum-forged titanium, psionic resonance crystals, and alloys that cannot be found anywhere else. You have 6 hours to create a blade. Make something worthy of a true warrior." The moment he finished speaking, the students rushed forward. The Torvins pushed their way to the heaviest metals, grabbing chunks of iron and steel that weighed hundreds of pounds. The Yelmiri floated toward the crystals that hummed with psychic energy. The Draxians collected enough material to build weapons the size of small trees. Emma did not rush. She walked slowly along the tables, looking at all the amazing materials. Some of them glowed. Some of them were so cold they froze the air around them. Some of them were so valuable that a single piece could buy a house back on Earth. She walked past all of them. At the back of the forge chamber, there was a pile of waste and scraps, things that were not good enough to be used. Broken tool handles, scrap metal, pieces of wood harvested from alien trees and used for simple things like carrying equipment. Emma picked up a wooden rod. It was about as long as her arm, rough and simple. Just a piece of wood. She carried it back to her bench. Instructor Kethral noticed immediately. He walked over to her, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. "Human," he said. "The materials are at the front of the chamber. That piece of wood is garbage." Emma looked up at him. Her face was calm and showed no fear. "You said to create a weapon, sir. You did not say what kind of weapon. The assignment is to forge a blade. A blade can be many things, Emma replied. A blade does not have to be made of metal. Kethral stared at her for a long moment. His yellow eyes were unreadable. The rules of the academy were clear. Students had freedom to create what they wanted. If this human wanted to embarrass herself, that was her choice. Very well, he said. Proceed. He walked away, and the other students began to laugh. A Draxian named Ventos was the loudest. He was huge, even for his species, with gray skin like stone and arms as thick as tree trunks. His father was an important member of the Academy's board of directors. Ventos was used to being the best at everything, and he enjoyed making others feel small. He walked past Emma's bench, carrying an armload of quantum steel. As he passed, he made sure to bump her shoulder hard enough to almost knock her off her seat. Primitive species, he said loudly to his friends. They are barely out of the caves. What did we expect? She probably thinks fire is magic. His friends laughed. Other students nearby smiled and shook their heads. Emma said nothing. She did not react to the insult or the push. She simply sat down, pulled a small knife from her pocket, and began to carve. The wood shavings fell to the floor around her feet. The sound of her knife scraping against the wood was quiet compared to the roar of furnaces and the pounding of hammers all around her. No one paid attention to what she was doing. That was their first mistake. In the far corner of the room, an old instructor named Counselor Thess watched with curious eyes. Thess was a Yelmiri with silver skin and large, dark eyes that could see beyond normal sight. She had been teaching at the academy for over 200 years, and she had learned to recognize when something interesting was about to happen. She watched the human girl carve her piece of wood, and she wondered what the child was really planning. The first hour passed. Students worked at their forges, shaping metal with fire and hammer. Emma carved in silence, her hands steady and sure. She had done this before, many times. Back on Earth, her grandfather had taught her how to make tools from nothing but wood and stone. He had called it the old way, the way humans had survived for thousands of years before they ever discovered metal. The other students thought she was foolish. They thought she was wasting her time. They thought she had already failed. They were wrong. The forge chamber was alive with noise and heat. Plasma furnaces roared like angry beasts. Gravity hammers slammed down on metal with sounds like thunder. Molecular assemblers hummed and clicked as they rearranged atoms into new shapes. The students of the Galactic Academy worked with machines that could reshape matter itself, creating weapons that would have seemed like magic to anyone who did not understand the science behind them. In her small corner, Emma Price carved her piece of wood. The other students looked at her from time to time. Some felt sorry for her. Some felt embarrassed on her behalf. Most just thought she was stupid. A few whispered jokes about the primitive human who did not know how to use real tools. Emma did not care. She had a plan, and she was following it. Her knife moved in slow, steady strokes. The wooden rod began to change shape under her hands. She smoothed the shaft until it felt balanced and right. She tapered one end, making it thinner and sharper. Every cut was careful and purposeful. There were no mistakes, no wasted motion. Counselor Thess walked through the room, checking on each student's progress. When she reached Emma's bench, she stopped and watched for a moment. The human girl did not look up from her work. "Child," Thess said softly, "there is no shame in asking for help. The Academy wants to see all its students succeed. If you need instruction on how to use the forging equipment, I can arrange for a tutor." Emma finally looked up. Her eyes were calm and focused. Wood shavings covered her hands and her lap. "I appreciate that, Counselor, but I am doing what I know how to do." Thess tilted her head. Her large eyes blinked slowly. "You know how to whittle sticks?" "I know how to make things with what I have," Emma said. "My grandfather taught me. He said the best tool is the one you can make yourself anywhere with anything." "Your grandfather sounds like an unusual man." "He was a soldier," Emma said. "He fought in 3 wars before I was born. He always told me that the most dangerous weapon in the world is a human being who refuses to give up." Tess considered this for a moment. She wanted to say more, to convince the girl that she was making a mistake, that she would never pass the test with a simple piece of wood. But something in Emma's eyes stopped her. There was no fear there, no doubt, only calm determination. "Very well," Tess said. "Good luck to you." She moved on, but she kept glancing back at the human girl as she continued her rounds. Hours passed. The other students' weapons began to take shape. Ventos was creating a massive war axe. The blade was made of quantum steel, programmed to vibrate at frequencies that could cut through starship hulls. It was nearly as tall as Emma and probably weighed more than she did. When he tested the edge against a piece of scrap metal, it sliced through without any resistance at all. A Torvan named Scrix had built a sword that could shift between solid energy states. One moment, it was a blade of gleaming metal. The next, it was a bar of pure light that could pass through shields and armor. It was a clever design that had taken the insect-like student many hours to perfect. A pair of Yalmuri twins were working together on matched daggers. The blades were bonded to their minds and would move according to their thoughts. They did not even need to hold them. The daggers floated in the air around them, spinning and darting like living things. Every student was creating something impressive, something powerful, something that showed off the advanced technology of their species and the resources of the Academy. And Emma carved her piece of wood. She worked through the heat and the noise without complaint. When she needed fire to harden the wood, she built a small one from scraps near her bench. The other students laughed at this. Why would anyone use regular fire when plasma furnaces were available? Emma did not explain. She simply did what she needed to do. By the 4th hour, her weapon was starting to look like something. The wooden rod had become a shaft, smooth and straight. One end was sharpened to a point that gleamed in the firelight. She used a rough stone to make the point even sharper, testing it against her thumb until a tiny drop of blood appeared. Good, she thought. Sharp enough. Ventos walked past again, this time without his friends. He looked at her work and laughed out loud. "That is it? That is your weapon? A pointed stick?" Emma held up the spear. It was about 7 feet long now, perfectly balanced. "It is a spear." "It is pathetic," Ventos said. "My war axe could cut through 100 of those without slowing down." "What are you going to do with that? Poke someone?" "Maybe," Emma said. "But I can make this spear anywhere." "Can you make your axe without your forges and your fancy materials?" Ventos snorted. "Why would I ever need to? I will always have access to the best equipment. I come from a powerful family. I do not need to make do like some cave dweller." "Must be nice," Emma said. Her voice was not angry or jealous. It was simply stating a fact. "It is," Ventos agreed. "You should go home, human. You do not belong here. This academy is for real warriors, not primitives who play with sticks." He walked away, laughing to himself. Emma went back to her work. She checked the balance of the spear one more time, adjusting the weight until it felt perfect in her hands. She tested the point against her bench, watching it sink into the wood easily. She practiced a few throws, getting used to the feel of the weapon. It was simple. It was basic. It was old, and it was exactly what she wanted. As the 6th hour approached, the instructor called for everyone to stop working. Students put down their tools and stepped back from their creations. The forge chamber fell silent. Instructor Kethrol walked among the students, examining each weapon. He nodded at some, made notes about others. When he reached Emma's bench, he stopped and looked at her spear for a long time. "This is what you have created?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "A wooden spear. No metal, no technology, no special features." "No, sir. Just wood and a sharp point." Kethrol picked up the spear and examined it carefully. He tested the balance, checked the point, felt the smoothness of the shaft. His expression did not change. "Tomorrow," he said, "we will test these weapons in the arena. You will have a chance to demonstrate what your creation can do." "I understand, sir." Kethrol set the spear back down and walked away. He did not say whether he approved or disapproved. He simply moved on to the next student. Emma gathered her things and prepared to leave. As she walked toward the door, she passed Counselor Thess, who was still watching her with those strange, knowing eyes. "You are either very foolish," Thess said quietly, "or very clever. I cannot decide which." Emma smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "My grandfather used to say the same thing." She walked out of the forge chamber with her wooden spear on her shoulder, leaving behind a room full of students who thought they had already won. Tomorrow would show them just how wrong they were. The testing arena was a huge round building that could hold 10,000 people. Rows of seats climbed up the walls like stairs, filled with students and teachers who had come to watch the first-year weapon demonstrations. Giant screens floated in the air, ready to show close-up views of each weapon and display information about its power and design. Emma sat in the waiting area with the other students. Her wooden spear rested across her knees. Around her, the other first-years talked excitedly about their creations, comparing features and guessing who would score the highest. No one talked to Emma. A few students looked at her spear and shook their heads. Others pretended she was not there at all. She had become a joke to them, the stupid human who brought a stick to a weapon test. Instructor Kethrol stood at the center of the arena. His voice was carried by speakers throughout the building. "Welcome to the first-year weapon demonstration. Each student will present their creation and show its abilities against a series of targets. The targets will increase in difficulty. Your performance will be judged on accuracy, power, and combat effectiveness." The crowd cheered. This was one of the most popular events at the Academy. Everyone loved watching new weapons tear through targets and prove their worth. Kethrol began calling names. One by one, students walked into the arena and showed what their weapons could do. The Torvin named Scrix went first. His phase-shifting sword was impressive. It could become solid to block attacks, then turn to pure energy to pass through shields. He destroyed every target easily, his insect-like body moving fast and smooth. The crowd applauded loudly. The Yelmeri twins went next. Their mind-controlled daggers danced through the air like birds, striking targets from impossible angles. They did not even move from where they stood. They simply thought about where the daggers should go, and the daggers went there. The crowd cheered even louder. Then Vintos was called. The Draxian walked into the arena like a king entering his throne room. His quantum war axe rested on his shoulder, gleaming under the bright lights. He smiled at the crowd and raised his weapon high. "Maximum difficulty," he demanded. "I want the hardest test you have." Instructor Kethrol nodded and entered the command. The targets that appeared were not simple wooden dummies. They were reinforced armor plates, energy shields, and blocks of neutronium, a metal so hard that normal weapons could not even scratch it. The crowd gasped. No first-year student had ever attempted this level of testing. Vintos charged forward. His war axe sang through the air, its vibrating edge cutting through everything in its path. Armor plates split in half. Energy shields shattered like glass. Even the neutronium block cracked and fell apart under the power of his weapon. When he was finished, Ventos stood in a field of destroyed targets. He raised his axe again, and the crowd went wild. They chanted his name. They stomped their feet. It was the most impressive display anyone had seen from a first year in decades. Ventos returned to the waiting area with a satisfied smile. As he passed Emma, he leaned close and whispered, "Try to beat that with your pointed stick." Emma said nothing. She just waited for her name to be called. More students demonstrated their weapons. A Kelsen student had created a whip sword that could extend or retract at will, striking targets from across the arena. A Draxian from a different clan had built a hammer that sent out shockwaves with every blow. A Yelmari had designed a blade that could predict where targets would move before they moved. Every weapon was powerful. Every demonstration was impressive. And then Instructor Kethral called the last name on his list. Emma Price. The arena fell silent. Emma stood up and walked into the center of the testing area. Her wooden spear looked tiny and sad compared to the weapons that had come before. On the floating screens, the spear's statistics appeared. No special medals, no energy signatures, no technological features. Just wood and a sharpened point. Someone in the crowd laughed. Others joined in. Soon the whole arena was filled with the sound of thousands of aliens, laughing at the primitive human and her primitive weapon. Emma waited for the laughter to die down. Then she spoke. "This weapon is called a spear," she said, her voice calm and clear. "Humans have been using it for over 400,000 years. It is older than our cities. It is older than our farms. It is older than our languages. Our ancestors used this weapon to hunt animals bigger than any of you, to fight enemies stronger than any of you, and to survive in conditions that would have killed any of you." The laughter faded. The arena became quiet. "I made this spear with nothing but a knife and a piece of wood from your garbage pile," Emma continued. "No forges, no machines, no rare materials. Just my hands and my knowledge." She held the spear up so everyone could see it clearly. This is what humans do. When we have nothing, we make something. When we are weak, we become clever. When the world tries to kill us, we refuse to die. Instructor Kethral spoke into the silence. "Proceed with your demonstration." The first targets appeared. Simple wooden dummies at various distances. Emma threw her spear at the first one, hitting it perfectly in the center of the chest. She walked forward, pulled out the spear, and threw again. Every throw was accurate. Every strike was clean. The crowd was not laughing anymore, but they were not impressed either. Anyone could hit a dummy that was standing still. The next phase involved moving targets. Holographic creatures appeared and ran across the arena. They were fast and unpredictable, designed to test a warrior's reactions and timing. Emma moved with them. She did not try to match the power of the weapons that had come before. She did not try to destroy everything in sight. She simply used her spear the way it was meant to be used. She thrust. She swept. She threw and retrieved. Every motion was smooth and efficient. No energy was wasted. When the moving targets were gone, Instructor Kethral spoke again. "There is one more phase to this test. It is optional. Students may choose to face a combat simulation. The difficulty is based on the assessed power of your weapon. Most students had faced medium-level simulations. Ventos had demanded the highest level and had barely won, taking 17 wounds before finally destroying his target. Emma thought for a moment. "I want a survival scenario," she said. "Lowest technology available. Put me somewhere with no machines, no tools, nothing but nature. And give me the most dangerous thing you have." The crowd murmured in confusion. What was the human doing? Was she trying to fail on purpose? Instructor Kethral looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and entered the command. The arena floor flickered and changed. The smooth stone disappeared, replaced by rocky ground covered in grass and mud. Trees appeared at the edges, thick and dark. A river ran through the middle, its water cold and fast. The temperature dropped. Wind began to blow, carrying the smell of wilderness, and from the forest, something emerged. It was called a Valena stalker. It was one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. 8 legs like a spider, armored hide like a tank, a mouth full of teeth designed for one purpose: killing. Even armed soldiers with advanced weapons struggled to survive against one of these creatures. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed that this was too dangerous, that the human would be killed. Emma looked at the creature and smiled. Then she began to hunt. Instructor Kethro stood in silence for a long time after the simulation ended. In his 300 years of teaching at the academy, he had never seen anything quite like what had just happened. He had watched students with powerful weapons barely survive against the Valena stalker. He had watched Ventos, with his quantum war axe, take 17 wounds before finally winning. And he had just watched a human girl with a wooden spear defeat the same creature without a single scratch. Ventos was the first to speak. He stood up in the waiting area, his massive body shaking with anger. "How was that supposed to be impressive?" he demanded. "She used a pointed stick against a simulation. It was not real. Put her against my axe in real combat, and we will see how long her primitive weapon lasts." Emma said nothing. She sat on her bench with her spear across her knees, waiting for whatever came next. Instructor Kethro raised one of his 4 hands for silence. The arena became quiet again. Thousands of eyes focused on him. The evaluation for this exercise was not based only on weapon power, he said. His voice was slow and thoughtful, like he was working out a problem as he spoke. The evaluation was based on understanding of combat, on adaptability, on effectiveness within the situation. He turned to face all the students in the arena. When Ventos faced the highest difficulty simulation with his quantum war axe, he took 17 wounds before finally destroying his target. His weapon was powerful enough to overcome his mistakes. It saved him when his tactics failed. Kethro paused and pointed at Emma. When Emma Price faced the same level of threat with a sharpened piece of wood, she took no wounds at all. Her weapon was simple, but her understanding of combat was complete. The arena was completely silent. No one moved. No one whispered. "Every species in this academy has technology," Kethro continued. "Every species here has access to weapons that would have seemed like magic to their ancestors. We depend on these tools. We have come to believe that better technology means better fighting ability." He walked to where Emma was sitting and picked up her wooden spear. He examined it carefully, turning it over in his hands. Humans have only had spaceships for 200 years. They joined our community less than 10 years ago. By our standards, they are primitive. They do not have psychic powers like the Yelmeri. They do not have natural armor like the Torvans. They do not have great strength like the Draxians. They have almost none of the advantages that other species take for granted. Emma listened quietly. Her face showed nothing. "And yet," Kethro said, "in all of their history, humans have never stopped fighting. They survived ice ages that killed most life on their planet. They survived predators larger and stronger than they were. They survived diseases that destroyed whole populations. They survived each other. They conquered their world not through natural gifts, but through stubborn refusal to quit." He set the spear back down on Emma's lap. "Today's assignment was to forge a blade. Most of you built weapons that required the Academy's resources. Weapons that needed our forges, our rare materials, our advanced technology. Weapons that would be useless without access to those same resources." He pointed at Emma again. Miss Price built a weapon that she could create anywhere, with anything, at any time. A weapon that would work if her technology failed. A weapon that has been proven effective across 400,000 years of use. Kethral looked out at the assembled students. This is what humans call making do. It is the reason they survived when all logic said they should have died long ago. It is the reason they spread across their planet, and then across their solar system, and then to the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but because they refused to give up, and they found ways to win with whatever they had. He let his words hang in the air for a moment. Those of you who laughed at Miss Price's weapon should remember today's lesson. Technology fails, resources run out, circumstances change, but the ability to adapt, to create solutions from nothing, to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless, that is the weapon that can never be taken from you. Ventos opened his mouth, like he wanted to argue, but something in Kethrali's expression stopped him. He closed his mouth and looked away. The demonstration was over. Students began to file out of the arena, talking quietly among themselves. The laughter from before was gone. In its place was something that might have been respect, or maybe just confusion. Emma gathered her things and started toward the exit. As she passed Ventos, she stopped just long enough to speak quietly. "Your axe is beautiful," she said. "Really impressive work. But ask yourself this. What happens if you are ever stranded? Somewhere without your forges and your quantum steel? What weapon do you make then?" Ventos did not answer. He just stared at her with an expression she could not read. Emma walked on without waiting for a response. Near the door, Counselor Thess was waiting. The Elmary's large eyes reflected the arena lights as she watched Emma approach. "That was remarkable," Thess said. "You planned that entire demonstration from the beginning, did you not? The wood, the spear, the survival scenario, all of it." Emma shrugged. "My grandfather used to say that anyone can win a fight when everything goes right. The real test is what you do when everything goes wrong." She held up her spear. "This is what humans do when everything goes wrong. We find a stick, we sharpen it, and we refuse to die." Thess studied the young human with new understanding. Her silver face showed something like wonder. "I think," she said slowly, "that the galaxy may have underestimated your species." Emma smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had heard that many times before. "Everyone does," she said. "That has actually worked out pretty well for us." She walked out of the arena with her wooden spear on her shoulder. Behind her, a chamber full of the galaxy's best young warriors watched her go. They were beginning to understand something that humans had known for a very long time. Strength was not everything. Technology was not everything. What mattered most was the will to survive, the cleverness to adapt, and the refusal to ever quit. The other species of the galaxy had their natural gifts, their advanced technology, their ancient civilizations. Humans had 400,000 years of practice at not dying. It was going to be very interesting to see which advantage mattered more. That night, in her small room at the academy, Emma sat by her window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of light years away, was a small blue planet where her ancestors had picked up sticks and rocks and decided they were not going to be victims. She held her spear and thought about her grandfather, about the lessons he had taught her, about the kind of person he had raised her to be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities for the galaxy to underestimate her species. Emma was looking forward to it. The humans had arrived, and they had brought 400,000 years of experience in doing the impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. The Velan Stalker was a perfect killing machine. It had been created by millions of years of evolution on a planet where everything wanted to kill everything else. Only the deadliest creatures survived, and the Stalker was the deadliest of them all. It was fast. It could cross the arena in seconds. It was strong. Its legs could tear through metal and bone with equal ease. It was armored. Normal weapons bounced off its hide like raindrops. And it was smart. It did not just attack blindly. It studied its prey. It waited for the right moment. It was patient. Most people who faced a villainous stalker died before they understood what was happening. Emma Price was not most people. She had grown up in Montana, a place on Earth where the land was wild and dangerous. Her grandfather had taken her hunting since she was 8 years old. He had taught her to track deer through snow, to wait in the cold for hours, to understand the way animals thought and moved. The stalker was not a deer. It was much more dangerous. But the rules were the same. Patience was the deadliest weapon. Understanding was more important than strength. Emma circled to the left, keeping the wind in her face. This was the first rule of hunting. Never let your prey smell you coming. If the wind was blowing from her to the stalker, it would know where she was. If the wind was blowing from the stalker to her, she had the advantage. The simulation was very realistic. The Academy's technology created real wind, real temperature, real smells. The stalker moved like a living creature because it was based on studies of actual Vellenif stalkers. Everything about this fight was as close to real as possible. The stalker prowled along the edge of the trees. Its 8 legs moved in a strange pattern that made it hard to watch. It knew something was in its territory. It was trying to decide if that something was a threat or a meal. In the stands, 10,000 aliens watched in confused silence. They were used to weapon demonstrations that involved explosions and energy beams and impressive displays of power. This was different. This was quiet. This was slow. Some of them thought it was boring. They did not understand what they were seeing. Emma moved carefully, always watching the stalker, always keeping track of the ground beneath her feet. She was not trying to attack. She was not trying to run away. She was doing something much more subtle. She was hurting. Every step she took, every position she chose, pushed the stalker slightly in a specific direction. Toward the river. Toward the muddy ground near the water's edge. The stalker did not notice. It was focused on hunting her, not paying attention to where it was being led. This was how humans had survived for hundreds of thousands of years. They were not the strongest animals on Earth. They were not the fastest. They did not have claws or fangs or armor. But they were patient. They could plan. They could think ahead while their prey only thought about the present moment. Emma's grandfather had called this the long game. You do not attack until you have already won. You move your enemy where you want them, and then you strike when they cannot fight back. The stalker finally made its decision. It burst from the trees with terrifying speed, all 8 legs pumping, its mouth opened wide to reveal rows of teeth like knives. Any other student would have been killed in that moment. The creature moved too fast to dodge, too fast to block. But Emma did not try to dodge or block. She had been waiting for this. She knew exactly what she was going to do. At the last possible second, she stepped to the side and thrust her spear into the joint between the creature's first and second legs. The wooden point did not go deep. It did not need to. It just needed to make the stalker stumble. The creature's momentum carried it forward, past Emma, toward the river. It tried to stop, but it was moving too fast. Its 8 legs hit the muddy ground near the water and sank immediately. The stalker thrashed and struggled, but every movement made things worse. Its legs sank deeper into the mud. It tried to pull free, but it was too heavy, and the ground was too soft. Within seconds, it was stuck up to its middle joints. Unable to move forward or backward, Emma followed slowly, staying out of reach of its snapping jaws. All the technology in the galaxy, she said. And you still have to know where to stand. You still have to understand your environment. You still have to be patient. Her words were picked up by the arena's microphones and broadcast to the entire crowd. 10,000 aliens heard her speak, and not one of them made a sound. The stalker roared and fought against the mud. Its teeth gnashed at the air. Its eyes burned with hatred. But it could not move. It was trapped. Emma circled behind it. The creature could not turn its head far enough to see her. It could not reach her with its jaws or its legs. It was completely helpless. She found the weak point at the base of its skull. Every creature had one, a place where the armor was thin, where a single blow could end everything. Her grandfather had taught her to always look for the weak point. It did not matter how strong your enemy was. Everyone had somewhere they could be hurt. She raised her spear and drove it home. The stalker shuddered once and went still. The simulation flickered and began to fade. The trees and the river and the muddy ground all dissolved. Back into the smooth floor of the arena. Emma stood alone in the center of the testing area. Her wooden spear was dark with simulated blood. Her face was calm. Her breathing was barely faster than normal. She had not taken a single wound. The silence in the arena stretched on for a very long time. Then, somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap. Another person joined them. Then another. The sound grew and spread until the entire arena was filled with applause. It was not the wild cheering they had given Ventos. It was something deeper, something more respectful. They were applauding not just a victory, but a lesson they had never expected to learn. Instructor Kethril stood at the edge of the arena, his 4 arms at his sides. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes had changed. They no longer looked at Emma like she was a joke. They looked at her like she was something new, something he had never seen before. Emma walked back toward the waiting area. As she passed Ventos, she saw the look on his face. He was not laughing anymore. He looked confused, almost angry. He did not understand how a pointed stick could defeat something that even his quantum war axe would have struggled against. Emma did not explain. She did not need to. The answer would come soon enough. She sat down on the bench and laid her spear across her knees. The blood was already fading, just part of the simulation, not real. But the lesson was real. The victory was real. And this was only the beginning.